Alright guys, welcome back to another horror movie review, and today is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003 with Jessica Biel. This movie only had a budget of $9.5 million, but it made back $107 million. So that's a success right there. Some people have a problem with this movie. I personally don't mind it. I think it's a pretty good movie for what it is, trying to update the series and keep it fresh and everything. It is produced by Michael Bay. And I think they put too much focus on action. For example, there's no dinner scene, and that's really disappointing to me. I would have taken out that whole slaughterhouse scene and put in a dinner scene. It doesn't, there is some disturbing stuff, but there's just a lot of this weird action, and it just doesn't fit a movie like this. There's also no grandpa, so what the hell's up with that? I mean, that's just, I didn't care for that at all. He's always in the movies, even if it's like Next Generation, where he does absolutely nothing. They show him, he gets up and walks out of the room. Even if it's just something small like that, it's still Grandpa, he's old as hell, he's in all the movies. There's no Grandpa in this one. But I do enjoy the movie for what it is, and I think it's a good remake, in a sense, because it is time to update the series. It's not like they were really doing awesome stuff in the 90s or late 80s with 3 or Next Generation. So remaking the first movie is a good idea, but it's impossible to capture the first movie. Another example is the steel door scene that they use in this. It's nowhere near as effective as the original scene, where Leatherface just drags in, I think his name's Kirk, and then slams the door behind him. You just can't recreate that with this new look for Leatherface, and Kemper is the one who gets it in this movie. And it didn't work for me. I thought it was good, it wasn't bad or anything, but nowhere near as good as the original. But that being said, I'm going to get into the movie now, and it starts off and it's recapping, well, it's not recapping anything, it's going through the opening, same opening as the original movie. And they switch a few things around here and there, but for the most part it is trying to follow the original. Like I said, a lot of emphasis on action though, and scenes that were never in the original movie. The casting is a little bit different, but they do open with the same story. These 5 kids were traveling, they found all this horrors and things like that. So this time, instead of just words, they actually show video footage of this police walkthrough where they're going through the house and they're finding these bones, and the cops talking about it. And this one also does take place in the 70s. It's August 19th, 1973. So they're showing the investigation. It's kind of opening like these events have already taken place. We see the police walk through at the crime scene. And then we cut to the 5 kids traveling through Texas. Jessica Biel plays Erin Hardesty, so that you can already see they changed a few things like the names and stuff. Morgan is kind of the nerdy Franklin character. He's not in a wheelchair or anything, but to me he was supposed to take the place of Franklin and be kind of the nerdy guy who doesn't have the girlfriend or anything. There's a hitchhiker named Pepper. Andy, who I believe is Kemper's brother. I may be thinking about the next movie, The Beginning, the one that's a prequel to this. But anyway, Andy, and of course Erin's boyfriend Kemper. And they're coming back from Mexico. They have 2 pounds of pot in these piñatas they're smuggling across, I guess, to go to a Lynyrd Skynyrd concert. And they're driving in the van, and they see this weird girl walking down the street, and they stop to help her. And she gets in the van, and she says, "They're all dead." And she tries to stop them from going in the direction towards the house. She doesn't want to go back there. She's freaking out. And then she pulls a gun out of her crotch and shoots herself in the head. She actually says, "You're all gonna die," and then shoots herself in the head, or in the mouth. And this was a cool scene because it was really just twisted. And it actually shows the smoke coming out of her mouth after this. And I thought it was just a really intense scene. I remember the first time I saw this movie and she did that, I was like, holy shit. And it builds up because this is how the sheriff gets involved and everything. So it definitely works. And it gives them a reason that they can't just leave. Because obviously this is a traumatic experience, but you're also stuck with the dead body. You can't just leave town, and especially when they have all these drugs in the car. So they can't just take off and escape. So even though weird things are happening to them and you would say, just get the hell out of there, because of the dead body in the van, they really can't just pick up and leave. So I thought it was a nice way to kind of keep them trapped in this situation. So they have this dead body in the car, and Kemper tosses out the piñatas full of pot, I guess because they know they're going to have to get the cops involved. And they stop at a store and they tell this old lady that they need to call the cops. And the lady tells them that the sheriff wants to meet them at the mill. So they have to go to this creepy old mill. They're really pissed off about it, but they go, and no sheriff is there. So they meet this creepy ass kid. He's moving around the mill. He's got like these really big teeth. He reminded me a lot of a young Macaulay Culkin. I don't know why, but that's just what I thought. And his name's Jediah, and he tells them that the sheriff's getting drunk, but that he lives close. They could walk to his house from here. So Aaron and Kemper walk to the house while the rest stay with Jediah at the van. And this kid was awesome. He did a great job with this movie. One of the most likable characters in this movie. So Aaron gets to the house, and there's this old man in a wheelchair. He's got no legs, and he lets Aaron in to use the phone, but he tells Kemper he has to wait outside. And this is, of course, the murder house, where everything's going to take place. And we see the sheriff arrive at the mill, and it's Arlie Emery. This was an amazing casting decision. They couldn't have gotten anyone better than him for this role. Seriously, he is so creepy in this movie. And I believe he's actually in the next movie too. I can only remember the push-up scene, but I'm pretty sure he's in there. And man, does he play this up. It's great. He is so evil. You're really just rooting for him to die towards the end. And he's always good in all his roles. And it's just so crazy to see him like this. And then see him in Saving Silverman when he's like taking a crap in the yard and playing the lovable coach character. But here, man, is he just evil. So he shows up, and he talks about he's trying to get the body out, and he's talking about copping a feel on the dead bodies he's removed from, other crime scenes, and just really disturbing stuff. My thought was this town is small as hell, and if I'm one of these kids, I don't know how old they were. They're probably in their mid-20s or so, but I don't know how old they're supposed to be in the movie. But if I was one of them, I'm thinking, how many bodies have you seen in a small town like this? Like, that's already a red flag to me. So he's talking about cobbing fills on the bodies and weird stuff like that. Back at the house, the wheelchair guy acts like he needs help so he can cop a fill on Aaron. It's kind of another disturbing scene here. Kemper goes inside to look for her because she's been taking a really long time, and Leatherface pops out, hits him in the head with a hammer, and drags him into the room, and then slams the steel door behind him. And this was, it was good. Like I said, it's not a bad scene or anything. It's just not nearly as effective as the first one, where you're kind of like, holy crap, they're really screwed now. Once you see that door slam, there's no escaping. And here, you didn't get that vibe from it. I also think it really helped the first one that it was so low budget that it looked really gritty and just dark. So let's see here. So Aaron goes to look for Kemper, but she ends up leaving the house. I guess she thought he went back to the van or something, so she just leaves. The sheriff puts the body in his trunk, and then he drives off. So Aaron shows up, and the others tell her that the sheriff just left. And they hear a car alarm go off. and they go to check it out. Morgan reaches into a trunk of a car, and then he does the whole, oh my god, something's got me bit, which it's a horrible time to be playing jokes. And he pulls out this bottle of water, this jar, with a picture of the hitchhiker girl who killed herself and her family. And I'm thinking, that's the picture they find out of all these cars. Seriously. All of these cars in this parking lot, or field, whatever it is, and they find the picture of the girl they just picked up who killed herself. So they decide to look for Kemper. Aaron goes to distract the wheelchair guy while Andy sneaks into the house. And the old man catches him. He sees Andy messing around, and he starts to pound his cane on the ground, and he says, "Bring it, bring it." A really strange scene here. And then this summons Leatherface, who pops out with a chainsaw, and he gets into a fight with Andy. And they run through the yard, where there is a crap load of laundry going on here. And I know a lot of people live in this house, but oh my god, there was like a mile of sheets in front of them that they're running through. Just so much laundry going on here. And Leatherface is chasing them through the sheets. I did like this scene because he was kind of just popping in and out, and he eventually cuts off Andy's leg. So we know Kemper's immobilized, if not dead at this point. And the only other character who's strong is Andy. Morgan, like I said, is kind of the nerdy character. So you have Andy, who's the only other strong character, and now he's lost a leg. So you really start to feel the dread that this situation is pretty terrible. I mean, there's really no hope for these guys between Leatherface and the evil sheriff. So he cuts off Andy's leg, drags him back to the house. Aaron runs back to the van, and the sheriff shows up. So Aaron's freaking out. The sheriff's telling her, calm down, it's going to be okay, tell me what happened, what's going on here. And then he sees a joint in the ashtray. So instantly, he's bad cop. Really bad cop. And he's talking about them doing drugs. Back at the dungeon, we see Andy. He's in Leatherface's realm. And Leatherface puts him on the meat hook and then puts salt on his leg to keep it fresh. This movie's just so damn twisted. So, the whole series. So he's got him on the meat hook, and he takes like this salt thing, he like sticks it on the, bleeding appendage so that he doesn't bleed out, and it will keep the wound fresh. It's just, very sick. And back at the sheriff has Aaron, Pepper, and Morgan face down. He takes Morgan and he makes him get in the van and then put the gun in his mouth and reenact how the hitchhiker killed herself. And this, if you've never seen this scene, it is pretty intense, I thought. It definitely has its disturbing moments in this movie, and this is one of those scenes. It's just crazy how slow it is to build up and how intense the sheriff is. Telling him, oh, was she sitting there? And he's like, no, she was sitting a little more this way, but he doesn't want to sit there because there's still like skull fragments. So the sheriff says, well, you better sit there, and then he moves him away and he sits there, and then he's like, okay, here's the gun. Now, what did she do? And he puts it on his head, and he's like, she didn't have a wound in her head. So he's like, well, she shot herself in the mouth. And he's like, well, put the gun in your mouth. And just a crazy ass scene. Oh, man. So anyways, that made me lose my spot. So he takes the gun, and he's got it in his mouth, and Pepper's saying, shoot the cop. And Aaron's freaking out saying, don't do this. You're just going to make everything worse. But he's got the gun on the sheriff, and he pulls the trigger. He tries to kill the sheriff. However, the gun is not loaded. And the sheriff doesn't like snap instantly or anything. He just says, "Now you've just killed a sheriff." So he takes Morgan, puts him in his car, and takes the keys to the van. Back at the dungeon, we see Leatherface making a new mask. He takes off the old one, and of course he's deformed. We see his face, and it's all messed up. They say he has a skin disease later or something. I don't know. But his face is all messed up. It looks like he's missing a nose. The sheriff takes Morgan to the house. He hits him in the face with a bottle, beats him up, just kicks the crap out of him. Aaron hotwires the van, and as they're trying to drive away, the tire falls off. And Leatherface attacks. He kills Pepper, and then when he... This was also an awesome scene, because he's killing Pepper, and Aaron's in the car, and she's got the lights on Leatherface. And he stands up and he turns and looks at her, and he's wearing Kemper's face. It's just really bizarre looking. It reminds me of House of a Thousand Corpses when Otis is wearing that girl's dad's face. But she takes off and she runs into this trailer park. She runs inside of a trailer, and we see a really skinny lady and a really fat lady. And she asks to use the phone, and of course they don't have a phone. Well, they tell her they don't have a phone, and they offer her some tea, and she's freaking out. She tells them about Leatherface, but they say, "He's just a sweet boy. He's got a skin disease." And so you know, oh god, she can't go anywhere. She's completely screwed. Everywhere she goes, she finds like more weirdos. So she sees a picture of this family with a baby, and then she hears a baby crying, and she realizes these people have stolen this family's baby. And she walks in the back room, and she's starting to get dizzy, and she sees this skinny lady on a phone. So of course they lied to her, and then she passes out from the tea. She wakes up in the house, and the old lady from the store earlier, the first place they stopped where they wanted to call the police, she's at the house now. So she's part of it too. And Leatherface throws her in the dungeon, and she sees Andy, who tries to lift himself off the meat hook. And she's trying to help him, she's trying to lift him off it, and he keeps falling back down on it. And I'm thinking, Heather in Next Generations had no problem getting off this thing. She got off the meat hook and out of the house. I still don't know how she did it, but she did. And Andy here, he can't get off the meat hook. He's screwed. So he's asking Aaron to kill him. She grabs a knife. She kills him. It's kind of a drawn-out scene. I thought it lasted a little too long. Leatherface is watching her through the floorboards. She finds Morgan, who's beat up. He's handcuffed and sitting in a bathtub. So she tries to escape with Morgan, and Jediah shows up and tells him where to go. He's going to try and help him escape. Leatherface starts chasing them through this maze, and they escape to this nearby shack, and they hide from Leatherface, but he finds them. They get in a fight with him. He puts Morgan on the chandelier, and then he like chainsaws his balls or something. I'm not really sure. That's what it looked like to me. So Morgan's dead. Aaron runs and tries to flag down a car, but it drives off, and then she runs into the slaughterhouse. And this was... I didn't care for the slaughterhouse scenes at all. I thought it was just unnecessary action for this type of movie. It really didn't need it at all. They could have done a much better job if they just went with a dinner scene instead of having Leatherface chase her all through this slaughterhouse with a chainsaw. So Leatherface is chasing her through this slaughterhouse. He actually trips and cuts his leg with the chainsaw, just like he did in the first movie at the very end. And he's chasing her through this slaughterhouse. She grabs a meat cleaver and hides in a locker, and then she jumps out and cuts Leatherface's arm off. Off! She cuts his arm off. Just hacks at Leatherface, and then his arm falls off. It was... I did not expect this. She runs and gets a ride with an 18-wheeler, but freaks out when she sees the driver going in the direction towards the house, just like the hitchhiker they picked up. He pulls over, and we see the sheriff, the old lady, the skinny lady, and the baby at the gas station. And the driver of the 18-wheeler gets out, and he tells the sheriff, "I picked up a girl and she needs help." Aaron's watching all of this through the window. She sees the baby inside, and somehow she gets the baby out of there. And then we see her hot wiring a car. And the sheriff is walking towards the 18-wheeler, and he's getting closer and closer. And we see her trying to hurry and hotwire this, and then she runs him over with the cop car. So I thought that was a nice swerve. We're thinking she's trying to start the truck, but she's actually stealing the cop car. And she runs over the sheriff, backs up, and runs over him again. And he was such a great villain that you really just were happy that she backed over him and ran over him again. That was awesome. And then we see she has the baby with her. She took the child and she's trying to escape. She's safe now and she's smiling. And then Leatherface pops out with one arm and just spins the chainsaw around and cuts the side of the car and then spins a little bit. And then he turns and he makes this awesome, super Leatherface evil look. And he's just staring down at her. That was great. And that was it. She escapes. So the last thing we see is the rest of the police walkthrough that open the movie. Leatherface pops out, kills the cops, and then it says 2 cops were killed in the Hewitt investigation. They changed the name of the family to Hewitt. And that's the only picture they have of Leatherface. And it shows this weird grainy photo of him as the movie ends. So that was it, really. I did think it was good. I thought it was pretty entertaining the whole time. Slaughterhouse started to drag for me. I wasn't interested in that. The whole chase and everything. I didn't care, and the movie did start to drag at that point, but it picked up again later. I really thought, because it's been a long time since I saw this movie. In fact, I actually have this, I'm not even sure where it is. I actually have this movie on VHS. I'm going to have to get that out for the next video on the beginning. But I actually have this movie on VHS. And it was a present. I've never opened it. But I do have it. But it's been a very long time since I've seen this. And I really thought when she was taken back to the house, we were going to get this dinner scene with the old lady. And I think they actually say at one point, should we invite her to dinner or something? Or can she stay for dinner? And I was thinking, okay, this is going to be good. But no, then she escapes from the dungeon and she's running through the maze. And there was just a lot of stuff like that. Leatherface chasing people. And he's a good creepy character, but he's not a chase character. Those scenes are good because Leatherface is so disturbing looking. But he's much better in kind of the dungeon meat hook role, I think. He's not like the Jason or Michael Myers. I just think he's better left in the dungeon. But, yeah, it was just a remake with Michael Bay producing it. Not to say he can't work on good movies. I think he was also behind the remake of the Friday the 13th series, and I really like that movie. But this one, too much action is not what Texas Chainsaw Massacre needs. And I can't remember much from the beginning, but I do remember that push-up scene. And I remember that being pretty disturbing. Or at least really intense. Because I do remember something about them trying to, like, fight the sheriff. So I'm looking forward to watching that one again. But anyways, that's it. That's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003. I'll be back with the beginning next. And then I'm going to do House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. So I hope you guys like this video. Leave your thoughts on this movie in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Bye. It is. And I think it's a good remake, in a sense, because it is time to update the series. It's not like they were really doing awesome stuff in the 90s or late 80s with 3 or Next Generation. So remaking the first movie is a good idea, but it's impossible to capture the first movie. Another example is the steel door scene that they use in this. It's nowhere near as effective as the original scene, where Leatherface just drags in, I think his name's Kirk, and then slams the door behind him. You just can't recreate that with this original movie. The casting is a little bit different, but they do open with the same story. These 5 kids were traveling, they found all this horrors and things like that. So this time, instead of just words, they actually show video footage of this police walkthrough where they're going through the house and they're finding these bones, and the cops talking about it. And this one also does take place in the 70s. It's August 19th, 1973. So they're showing the investigation. It's kind of opening like these events have already taken place. Alright guys, welcome back to another horror room movie review, and today is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003 with Jessica Biel. This movie only had a budget of $9.5 million, but it made back $107 million. So that's a success right there. Some people have a problem with this movie. I personally don't mind it. I think it's a pretty good movie for what it is, trying to update the series and keep it fresh and everything. It is produced by Michael Bay, and I think they put too much focus on action. For example, there's no dinner scene, and that's really disappointing to me. New look for Leatherface, and Kemper is the one who gets it in this movie. And it didn't work for me. I thought it was good, it wasn't bad or anything, but nowhere near as good as the original. But that being said, I'm going to get into the movie now. And it starts off, and it's recapping, well, it's not recapping anything, it's going through the opening, same opening as the original movie. And they switch a few things around here and there, but for the most part it is trying to follow the original. Like I said, a lot of emphasis on action though, and scenes that were never in the original. I would have taken out that whole slaughterhouse scene and put in a dinner scene. It doesn't. There is some disturbing stuff, but there's just a lot of this weird action, and it just doesn't fit a movie like this. There's also no grandpa, so what the hell's up with that? I mean, that's just, I didn't care for that at all. He's always in the movies, even if it's like Next Generation, where he does absolutely nothing. They show him, he gets up and walks out of the room. Even if it's just something small like that, it's still grandpa, he's old as hell, he's in all the movies. There's no grandpa in this one. But I do enjoy the movie for what it is.